Chapter 1. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. 10.000. Fold Feedback System Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, are you willing to be my disciple? They were on Lingzhou Peak of the Qingyun clan. Yi Xian had asked a handyman disciple in front of him the question. The handyman disciple was a young girl. Her small face was red, and her hair was tied up in a bun. Her big eyes were filled with shock. Yi Xian was the youngest elder of the Qingyun clan, the favored son of the heavens. Meanwhile, her natural talent was extremely weak. She could not understand why an elder of the Qingyun clan would want to take her, someone so weak that she could only qualify to be a handyman disciple, in as a personal disciple. Why? Did Elder Yi Xian want to take her in as a personal disciple, or as a handyman disciple? The young girl Lu Yanran's mind was blank, so she could not give him any reaction. At this moment, Yi Xian's face was pale and somewhat anxious. He was facing a crisis of life and death. He had just transmigrated here, but he had already been poisoned, and he only had 4 hours left to live. Fortunately, when he was on the verge of despair, the system did not disappoint. The system was called the Disciple Feedback System. If he gave his disciple something, he would receive it back several-fold as feedback. Thus multiple varied from 2 to 10,000 fold. For example, if Yi Xian helped a disciple improve his comprehension, his own comprehension would increase by 2 to 10,000 points. The specific multiple varied each time. The higher the multiple, the lower the probability of it occurring. After gaining this system and understanding its functions, Yi Xian knew that he had found a way to escape the jaws of death. The most important thing for him to do now was to take in a disciple. Because this system was called the Disciple Feedback System, he could only get feedback if he gave a disciple something. That was why Yi Xian wanted to take in this handyman disciple, Lu Yanran. At this moment, Lu Yanran was still in shock. Because in this world where the strong were respected, it was almost impossible to be taken in as a disciple by the strong if one did not have a talent or a strong background. Therefore, Lu Yanran could not believe her eyes and ears right now. She thought she might have wished to be taken in so badly that she had started to hallucinate. She could not help but laugh at herself. She did not expect to go so crazy she would begin hallucinating. She reached up with her small hand and pinched her cheek. It hurt. Now, Lu Yanran was really confused. It seemed that this was not an illusion. What, you don't want to be my disciple? Yi Xian's words were clear in Lu Yanran's ears. Yi Xian looked at Lu Yanran, who was across from him, somewhat helplessly. Just now, he had screened the disciples he knew in the Qingyun clan in his mind. He then realized that he really knew too little about the Qingyun clan was really too little. Although he knew some disciples with outstanding talent in the clan, most of them had already been accepted as disciples by other elders. After thinking about it for a while, he could only think of one suitable candidate. That was the handyman disciple in front of him, Lu Yanran. Of course, the reason he chose Lu Yanran was not that the girl had exquisite and beautiful facial features, as well as a graceful and sinewy body. It was because Lu Yanran was usually responsible for cleaning the area near Yi Xian's residence on Lingzhou Peak. Since he saw her often, even if Yi Xian did not pay much attention to her, he still had a good impression of her. Moreover, Yi Xian occasionally noticed that Lu Yanran was very diligent with her work. She cleaned every area she worked on thoroughly. Along with that, as soon as she finished her work, she would immediately go to practice and not waste any time. Because Lu Yanran's talent was very average and her status was low, she had no chance to come into contact with the Qingyun clan's core techniques. However, she still worked hard. This perseverance moved Yi Xian. It was because of this that Yi Xian decided that no matter how talented Lu Yanran was, he would take her in as his first disciple. Become Elder Yi Xian's disciple. Lu Yanran still looked somewhat incredulous. She found it hard to believe that her dream of being taken in as a disciple by a great master would ever actually happen. Yi Xian's eyes were calm as he looked at Lu Yanran in front of him. The latter suddenly woke up from her daze and immediately kowtowed. "Your disciple is willing." She spoke loudly. When she raised her head, her forehead was red and swollen. Lu Yanran completely ignored her red and bumpy forehead. She was already trembling slightly from excitement. "All right," Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction and said softly. "All right, since that's the case, from today onwards, you will be my first disciple." On the Tianyuan continent, most masters had to go through a series of complicated steps before taking in a disciple. This was because the entire Tianyuan continent paid great attention to masters. However, there were also some masters who did not like the red tape and would directly appoint disciples. Now that Yi Xian was on the verge of death, he naturally did not have the mood to think about such complicated procedures. "Don't kneel. You can get up." Yi Xian spoke indifferently. Lu Yanran quickly thanked him and stood up. Yi Xian looked at Lu Yanran. She was still very young. If Yi Xian were back in his previous life, she would probably be a girl who had just entered junior high school. At this time, although Lu Yanran had regained some of her consciousness, she was still in a daze. She could not understand how she had so easily become elder Yi Xian's disciple. Yi Xian had been known as the most talented and youngest elder of the Qingyun clan for the past 1,000 years. What had she done to become elder Yi Xian's first disciple? The sudden surprise made Lu Yanran unable to wake up. "Since you've accepted me as your master, I will give you a pill today. Later, I will go into seclusion. When I come out, I will give you other treasures." "Thank you, master," Lu Yanran said in surprise. She knew very well that the pill that Yi Xian was going to take out was definitely not an ordinary item. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, he took out a fragrant pill from his pocket. In fact, before accepting Lu Yanran as his disciple, Yi Xian had already thought about this carefully. This was because after he obtained the system, he received a novice reward. The first time he gave his disciple something, he would be rewarded 10,000 fold. With this novice reward, he had already found two ways to save himself. One was to give his apprentice cultivation directly, so he could get 10,000 times the feedback. Then, his problem would be solved. Chapter 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bestow the pill translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. However, this path would not be so easy to walk at the moment. After all, most of his meridians were broken, and all the bones in his body were even worse off. Under such circumstances, it would probably be impossible for him to transfer his cultivation to his disciple. Moreover, the large amount of cultivation that would be required for this was probably not something his broken body could withstand. In this case, he could only choose the second option. He would give Lu Yanran an antidote. This way, he would definitely obtain a higher quality panacea. Fortunately, the 10,000 fold feedback system was not just a return of quantity. The system would automatically convert the superposition of quantity into an increase in quality as well. Unfortunately, most of the antidote pills in Yi Xian's interspatial ring had been used up. The only one left was the white pill he had just given to Lu Yanran. This pill was a third-grade soul returning pill. It was not a precious thing in Yi Xian's eyes. However, Lu Yanran was staring blankly at the third-grade soul returning pill in her hand. In her eyes, this pill was extremely precious. After all, a third-grade soul returning pill could treat the injuries of a master of the core formation realm. How could her master give one to her so easily? Lu Yanran's body trembled slightly. She felt a warm current run through her body. Her master's great love moved her significantly. After Yi Xian gave her a few more simple instructions, he quickly rushed to his place of seclusion. Just as Yi Xian was leaving, the system's clear voice rang in his mind. Ding! The host has detected that a third-grade revival pill has been bestowed upon his disciple. After the 10,000. Feedback, he has obtained a 7th grade nirvana pill. After hearing the sound, Yi Xian quickly calmed his heart and looked at the system space. He saw that a purplish-red pill was floating quietly in the system space. Even though Yi Xian had not taken out the pill yet, he could already smell its pungent medicinal fragrance. Beside the 7th-grade nirvana pill was a row of small words. Yi Xian focused his gaze and saw that it was the description of the 7th-grade nirvana pill's effect. 7th-grade nirvana pill. A top-tier 7th-grade pill. This pill can only be refined by a top-tier pill master, and even then there is a high failure rate. Not only can this pill cure all injuries and viruses below the 7th grade, but it also has a life and death effect. It can also greatly increase the strength of the user. The power of the pill is divided into 7 segments. After each segment is released, the user's strength will increase rapidly. After the power of the 7th segment is fully released, the user can possess even the power of a king. After reading the explanation of the 7th rank nirvana pill, Yi Xian's worried heart finally relaxed. With this, he could finally be saved. He threw a token to Lu Yenran and said, "From now on, I will go into seclusion. You will stand guard outside the door. No one can come and disturb me without my prior permission." Yi Xian had thrown his elder's token to Lu Yenran. As long as he had this token, even if the master of the Qingyun sect wanted to see him, he would not be able to force his way through to him. After all, the master still had to give face to him, Yi Xian. "Yes, master." Lu Yenran held the token with both hands and watched Yi Xian leave respectfully. 7th grade nirvana pill, I hope you won't disappoint me. After Yi Xian walked into the hall, he closed the door tightly behind him. His body quickly collapsed before he even arrived at the futon. Like an eggplant hit by frost in winter, his entire body was covered in a cold sweat. Just now, in order to maintain his image as an elder, he had deliberately gathered up his own power. As a result, his injuries began to get even more serious. Fortunately, he now had a 7th grade nirvana pill, so these injuries should not be a problem anymore. He used the last of his strength to take the 7th grade nirvana pill out of the system space. There were exquisite patterns on the pill. At first glance, one could not see anything special about them. However, as soon as the pill was in his hands, Yi Xian immediately noticed the terrifying energy it contained. Yi Xian did not have time to hesitate for too long before he swallowed it down. He initially thought that the medicinal power of the nirvana pill would come like a surge of water, but the truth was that after he swallowed it, its medicinal power was like a trickle of water, constantly nourishing his limbs and bones. Yi Xian felt extremely comfortable. The broken meridians and broken bones in his body slowly recovered under the pill's gentle yet powerful medicinal power. While his body was recovering from this medicinal power, it was also becoming stronger than before. The layers of his bones, flesh, and fascia were all undergoing qualitative changes. During this process, Yi Xian paid attention to the minute changes in his body, so he was not able to notice the passage of time. At this time, Lu Yenran was still holding the elder token that Yi Xian had given her, dutifully waiting outside the door. She had already recovered from her initial shock and confusion. She could not help but look at the 3rd grade soul returning pill in her hand. She never expected that Elder Yi Xian would actually give her such a precious pill. To the entire Qingyun sect, a 3rd grade soul returning pill could be considered quite precious. The other elders probably would not be willing to give it to their disciples so easily. However, when her master gave her this pill, he did not seem reluctant at all. Lu Yenran knew very well in her heart that she was only a small-time cultivator who was currently in the refinement state. If she used this soul returning pill now, it would simply be a waste of a gift from heaven. Therefore, Lu Yanran made up her mind. Unless she encountered a situation where she had no other choice, she absolutely would not use this pill. She carefully put the pill into her pocket. Until now, her heart had not stopped beating wildly. To her, the third-grade soul returning pill was something that only core formation realm masters could refine. It was a priceless treasure. On the Tianyuan continent, the cultivation realms of cultivators were ranked from low to high. Refinement state, Qi transformation state, true essence state, purple spirit state, core formation state, unity state, condensing state, and so on. Within each large stage were 10 small stages. Lu Yanran was only at the 4th stage of the refinement state. For ordinary people, this was already very powerful. However, in the eyes of masters, it was not worth mentioning at all. Chapter 3 You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Breakthrough Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless fantasy translation on this continent, those in the refinement state could only bully ordinary people. Only after reaching the Qi transformation state could one be considered to have a certain level of strength to be able to walk on bodies of water. Of course, the water had to be somewhere where there were no experts around. A cultivator could only become an alchemist after reaching the true essence state. Because in order to refine pills, one needed at least the pure energy of the true essence state. Even after reaching the true essence state, a cultivator could only refine first-grade pills. Those in the purple spirit state could refine second-grade pills, and pills like the third-grade soul returning pill could only be refined after reaching the core formation state. For a person like Lu Yanran who was in the refinement state, it would be difficult for her to obtain a third-grade elixir even if she spent her entire life working on it. Based on this, it was clear how important the third-grade soul returning pill was to her. Just as Lu Yanran was getting lost in a daze, a piercing sound came from afar. With a whoosh, a beautiful figure quickly descended onto the Lingjiu peak. Within the Qinyan sect, the sect master and every elder had their own mountain peak. Elder Yi Xian's Lingjiu peak was his own territory. As Yi Xian did not usually take in disciples, the entire peak was a little deserted. Only a few miscellaneous disciples responsible for Yi Xian's clothing, food, accommodation, and travel would occasionally show up. Lu Yanran soon saw the person who had come to visit. She saw that the person was a woman with a graceful figure and a beautiful appearance. It was none other than the elder of the Qinyan sect, Lin Qing. Lu Yanran's expression was serious. She cupped her fists at Lin Qing according to the sect's etiquette customs. Greetings, Elder Lin Qing. Lin Qing slowly descended from the sky. She looked at Lu Yanran in front of her with confusion. Because at this moment, Lu Yanran was still wearing the uniform of an odd-job disciple. Thus, Lin Qing did not understand. She did not understand why this handyman was not doing anything but instead standing guard outside Elder Yi Xian's hall. Before Lin Qing could ask, Lu Yanran spoke first. Elder Lin, please stop. Master is currently in seclusion. He cannot be disturbed by anyone. Please forgive him. After hearing Lu Yanran's words, Lin Qing was also shocked. However, she soon saw the elder's token in Lu Yanran's hand. It was Yi Xian's token. Lin Qing no longer had any doubts about Lu Yanran's words. However, she was still very surprised. Yi Xian, who had always been focused on his own cultivation, had actually begun to take in disciples. It seemed like his situation was getting a little bad. Thinking of this, Lin Qing's mood could not help but sink. She wondered. Could it be that Yi Xian knew that he was dying, so he chose a disciple at the last minute to pass on his legacy? Although she was a little upset, Lin Qing was not in a hurry to break into the hall. She could still feel traces of fluctuations coming out from the hall. Moreover, it had been Yi Xian's idea to have Lu Yanran stay here, so she naturally would not rashly barge in. Thus, Lin Qing went to the front of the hall and sat down cross-legged. As an elder of the Qinyan sect, she had naturally also participated in the battle for the treasures of heaven and earth a few days ago. It was during that battle that Yi Xian was poisoned by the people of the Xianin sect with the 5-poison powder. Lin Qing had also gotten slightly injured when she tried to save Yi Xian, who was being besieged by many experts. However, her injuries were not serious, and she had already fully recovered. Right now, Lin Qing did not know that while Yi Xian had been poisoned by the 5-poison powder, he had also been poisoned by another highly toxic bone-dissolving powder. If she knew the truth, she would definitely be despairing right now. This was because the bone-dissolving powder was much stronger than the 5-poison powder. It could be said that there was no antidote for the bone-dissolving powder in the entire Great Qian dynasty. The two girls, one old and one young, waited in front of Yi Xian's hall in silence. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. No one else came during this time. During this time, Lu Yanran continued obeying Yi Xian's orders and did not leave the front of the hall at all. After all, Lu Yanran was only at the 4th stage of the refinement state. With her current strength, it was impossible for her to not eat and drink without her bodily functions being affected. She had not eaten for 2 days and not a single grain of rice was inside her tummy now, which was why her body was beginning to collapse. Lin Qing, who was beside her, was resting with her eyes closed. She had not noticed Lu Yanran's condition. At this moment, a strong wave of aura suddenly came from the hall where Yi Xian was. Lin Qing, who had been sitting cross-legged in meditation, suddenly opened her eyes. Was that a breakthrough? Lin Qing's face was full of shock. She could clearly sense the strength of the aura coming from the hall. After all, she was a powerhouse in the core formation realm. At this moment, she could clearly feel that the sense of pressure within her body was still increasing. How could this be? The surprise in Lin Qing's eyes did not disappear for a long time. She did not understand why Yi Xian, who should have been seriously injured and on the verge of death, was suddenly emitting such a powerful aura. Moreover, his aura kept growing more powerful. It was clearly a phenomenon that only occurred after one broke through. Just as Lin Qing felt she could not grow more shocked, 5 more cracks of the sound barrier breaking could be heard in the distance. They came from the other peaks of the Qinyan sect. It was obvious that these 5 people had also been attracted to the astonishing things happening where Yi Xian was. Soon, 5 figures arrived near Lin Qing. They all stood in the air. All of them looked at the hall which Yi Xian was in with great shock. The 6 of them all stood in the air. This was something that only core formation realm masters could do. The 5 of them were the sect master, deputy sect master, and elders of the Qinyan sect. The one in the middle was the sect master, Wan Shanhai. The few of them landed and approached the hall where Yi Xian was. They were like Lin Ing, full of doubts. They all wanted to figure out what had happened to Yi Xian to make him able to emit such a powerful aura. At this moment, Lu Yanran was standing in front of the hall. When she saw the high-level members of the sect appear, she felt a strong pressure. Despite the pressure, she still forced herself to stop them. Sect Master, Deputy Sect Master, and Elders, please wait. Master is still in seclusion. Please don't disturb him. Lu Yanran was just a servant disciple. It took great courage to be able to say these words in front of so many high-level members of the sect. Lu Yanran's words attracted the gazes of these higher-ups. When they saw her odd-job disciple attire, they were all somewhat displeased. What did you just say? Wan Shanhai focused his gaze on her and coldly asked. Chapter 4. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. True Core State Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Wan Shanhai looked at Lu Yanran coldly with a displeased expression. This glance scared Lu Yanran so much that she took a few steps back. She had not swallowed a drop of water for 2 days, and her body was already being pushed to the limit. Now that she was being stared at by so many higher-ups, she could not help but feel flustered. Fortunately, these people did not exert any pressure on Lu Yenran. Her small body definitely would not have been able to withstand it if they did. Wan Shanhai reacted to what Lu Yenran had just said. "You just said that he's your master." Then, his gaze drifted to the sect elder token that Lu Yenran was holding tightly in her hand. The word Yi on it indicated that it was Yi Xian's elder token. The others reacted quickly and soon understood the current situation. Elder Yi has taken in a disciple. And a servant disciple, at that. Everyone was surprised. Everyone knew very well that Yi Xian, a rare genius of the Qinyan sect, had never bothered with taking in disciples. Usually, he was too busy with his own cultivation and rarely paid attention to outsiders. This was very normal. After all, Yi Xian was still very young. The most important thing for him right now was to raise his cultivation level as quickly as possible. Only when his own cultivation reached a bottleneck would he need to consider taking in disciples and passing on his legacy. However, why would Yi Xian, who had such a distinct personality, suddenly change so drastically and take in a handyman as a disciple? Everyone could not wait to learn Yi Xian's thoughts behind this. Thinking of Lu Yenran's words just now and looking at Yi Xian's elder token in her hand, they all gave up on the idea of barging into the hall. Even though Lu Yenran was just a handyman disciple. Now that she was holding Yi Xian's elder token, she could speak for him. And after calming down, everyone could not help but share Lin Qing's thoughts. Everyone felt that it was very likely that Yi Xian knew that he did not have long to live. That was why he had accepted a servant disciple as his disciple in such a hurry. He did not want his legacy to end. Thinking of this, everyone present could not help but allow some of their sorrow to leak through their facial expressions. At this moment, everyone's hearts were filled with resentment toward the Xianin sect. If not for the Xianin sect, Elder Yi Xian would not have fallen into such a state. However, if Yi Xian was really on the verge of death, then why had there been an aura akin to a breakthrough coming from the main hall just now? Although they were extremely confused, these people still waited outside the main hall quietly. No matter what, as long as there was still an aura fluctuation coming out from the hall, it meant that Yi Xian was still alive. Another 2 hours passed. An even more astonishing aura came out of the hall. This aura was much stronger than the one before. Everyone's eyes widened. It's the true core realm. It's indeed the true core realm. This kind of aura is very powerful. What's going on? What's happened to Yi Xian? Everyone's faces were covered with shock and confusion. They could not understand why the hall which Yi Xian was in would emit a pressure that only those in the true core realm could possess. Among the core formation realm were empty core, true core, and golden core. Within empty core, true core, and golden core, there were early, middle, and late stages. With Lu Yenran being so weak, she was already unable to withstand the pressure of those in the true core realm. Just when she felt that her body was about to explode, she suddenly felt her body and mind lighten. It turned out that it was Lin Qing who had made a move and helped her block most of the pressure. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on the door to Yi Xian's hall. Everyone wanted to find out what had happened to Yi Xian that allowed him to leap into the true core realm. Lu Yenran's face was also full of shock. She did not know what her master had done. She did not know how terrifying this so-called true core realm could be. However, based on the expressions of the high-level members of the Qinyan sect around her, she could roughly guess that her master had probably broken through to a very terrifying realm. Based on Wan Shanhai and the others' expressions, it was very clear that this was a big deal. Perhaps the true core realm could be seen as a very expert realm within the entire Great Qian dynasty. That was indeed the case. As long as the golden core realm experts were not around, the true core realm experts could completely run the Great Qian dynasty completely amok. After Lu Yanran figured it out, she stared unblinkingly at the hall. She really wanted to look through the main door so she could clearly see what was going on inside. The others were just as curious as her and did not understand what had happened. Fortunately, it did not take long for the powerful aura to dissipate. A slender figure walked out of the door. He was handsome and had a strong facial structure. Sect Master, Deputy Sect Master, Elders. The person who had come was Yi Xian. His appearance made everyone's eyes light up. Just now, everyone had still been very confused and suspected that someone else might be in the hall. However, after Yi Xian appeared in front of their eyes, everyone's doubts were completely dispelled. Although they still did not know how Yi Xian escaped death and had benefited from misfortune. This was still a good thing for the Qingyun sect. Elder Yi, why did you? The sect master, Wan Shanhai, looked at Yi Xian in confusion. Right now, he urgently needed an explanation from Yi Xian. It was just a lucky opportunity. I was lucky enough to benefit from misfortune. Yi Xian knew that these people wanted an answer. However, he could not let outsiders know that he had the system. Hearing this, the others all nodded silently. Although Yi Xian did not elaborate, the simple phrase "lucky opportunity" was enough to explain everything. After all, cultivators knew that opportunities could often be unpredictable and wonderful. There were both big and small opportunities. A small opportunity might just be a simple treasure. However, a big opportunity was often an epiphany that could bring about a rapid increase in cultivation. In short, Yi Xian could cover everything up with the word opportunity. Across the vast and boundless Tianyuan continent, there were cultivators obtaining opportunities of varying sizes all the time. The sect masters and elders of the Qingyun sect had all obtained opportunities of varying sizes during their cultivation process. Therefore, it was not appropriate for them to ask too many questions. Chapter 5 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Foolish Disciple Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. From the looks of it, the opportunity Yi Xian had obtained this time was no small one. After all, 2 days ago, everyone knew that Yi Xian had been poisoned and was likely going to die very soon. However, not only was Yi Xian completely cured of the poison now, but he had also made great progress in terms of his strength. Could it be that Yi Xian had obtained a top-tier 4th grade pill, which was why he had come across such a great opportunity? No one knew that Yi Xian had ingested bone-dissolving powder earlier. Therefore, everyone thought that a 4th grade pill would be able to dispel the 5 poison powder and give Yi Xian a certain increase in strength. If they were to find out that Yi Xian had taken a 7th grade pill 2 days ago, everyone would probably be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the floor. At this moment, Wan Shanhai, the sect master of the Qingyun sect, woke up from his initial shock. He laughed heartily and said, "That's great. Now our Qingyun sect has finally gained another true core realm expert." Wan Shanhai was really delighted at Yi Xian's breakthrough. Previously, Qingyun sect only had 2 true core realm experts. They were the sect master, Wan Shanhai, and the deputy sect master. Now that there was another true core realm expert, Yi Xian, this would definitely raise the overall strength of the Qingyun sect. The atmosphere between the higher-ups of the Qingyun sect was relatively harmonious. After all, with a force like theirs, if the higher-ups were not united, the entire sect would quickly fall apart and be replaced by external forces. Therefore, after everyone confirmed that Yi Xian had broken through to the true core realm, everyone stepped forward and congratulated him. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Yi, for successfully breaking through to the true core realm. Everyone present had a joyful look on their faces. At this moment, Lu Yanran was standing far away from them. When she looked at Yi Xian, her eyes were filled with joy. After congratulating Yi Xian, the higher-ups of the Qingyun sect left Lingzhou Peak one after another. Yi Xian's breakthrough had injected a surge of energy into them. After all, it was not easy for those at their level to have breakthroughs. Now that there was a living example right in front of them, everyone's motivation had been stoked. After everyone left, soon only Yi Xian and Lu Yanran were left on Lingzhou Peak. You foolish disciple. Yi Xian could tell at a glance that Lu Yanran had been guarding the main hall without eating or drinking for the past 2 days. You're too stupid. He scolded her with some heartache. After hearing Yi Xian's words, Lu Yanran knew that he was feeling heartache for her, so she quickly lowered her head. Yi Xian taking her in as his disciple had happened too suddenly, so Lu Yanran had simply been following his instructions to the word for the past 2 days. She had been very afraid. She was afraid that if she made a slight mistake, Yi Xian would not want her anymore. She knew very well that her talent was lacking, and in theory, she was not worthy of being elder Yi Xian's disciple. It was precisely because of that she cherished this opportunity so much. She needed to become strong and avenge her family. Yi Xian walked to Lu Yanran's side and rubbed her head with his hand, feeling sorry for her. If I didn't come out of seclusion for a long time, were you going to starve to death here? Yi Xian did not know whether to call Lu Yanran stupid or loyal. In fact, there was food and drink not far from where they currently were. If Lu Yanran went to eat something, although she would have to leave the hall for a short time, the risk would still be very low. Yi Xian said, "Go back and rest well. Tomorrow, I will give you a new opportunity." "Yes, sir." Lu Yanran nodded frantically and staggered away. After Lu Yanran left, Yi Xian turned his attention back onto himself. He could see that the true core in his body contained extremely terrifying energy. He felt that his true core was like a miniature planet. At this moment, as long as he willed it, he could easily mobilize the terrifying energy. A mere empty core realm expert, if placed on Earth, could be called a humanoid missile. Meanwhile, a true core realm expert was more than 10 times stronger than an empty core realm expert. Is this real life? Yi Xian muttered to himself. He was very surprised at how terrifying he was. With his current terrifying body, if he were still in his previous life, nothing could hurt him besides nuclear weapons. However, he knew very well that there were countless people like him across the entire Tianyuan continent. Compared to other masters, he was nothing. Even within the entire Great Qian dynasty, Yi Xian was still not the strongest around. However, under normal circumstances, he should be able to do whatever he wanted. In his body, besides the true core energy, there was also a purple pill that was slowly rotating. This was the 7th grade nirvana pill he had consumed. After removing the 5. Poison powder and bone. Dissolving powder as well as breaking through, only 1.7 of the 7th. Grade nirvana pill's energy had been consumed. The rest of the pill's energy was still being stored in his body. Yi Xian could feel that after absorbing all the energy of the pill, his strength had definitely experienced a tremendous change. The guy from the Xianin sect. Yi Xian muttered to himself. His current strength was more than enough for him to go and kill those who had surrounded and attacked him just a few days ago. However, he was not in a hurry. He could still make a long-term plan right now. After all, within the Great Qian dynasty, the overall strength of the Xianin sect was ranked second. Their sect had Golden Core Realm Masters in charge. Moreover, the Xianin sect should have more than 20 true core realm and empty core realm masters altogether. Yi Xian was very clear on the fact that it was not too safe for him to rashly go and kill the other party now. Until he achieved the golden core realm or even the strength of the completion of the core formation realm, he could not be too confident. If he was still the previous Yi Xian, he would have a long way to go before he could obtain the strength of the completion of the core formation realm. However, for Yi Xian, who had the 10,000. Fold feedback system, the day was not too far away. He felt that he should first extract all the rewards he could get from Lu Yenran, then take in a few more disciples. The next morning, Lu Yenran arrived at Lingzhou Peak very early. After resting well the previous night, she finally recovered. Chapter 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Spiritual Power Infusion Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. When Lu Yenran stepped onto Lingzhou Peak, she had a mixed expression on her face. She was full of excitement but also a little nervous. Master. As soon as Lu Yenran arrived on the peak, she saw that Yi Xian was already waiting for her in the courtyard. She hurriedly bowed to him. Now that you have become my disciple, you don't need to wear the kind of clothes handyman disciples wear. You can go to the Cantonese school later and get a set of clothing exclusive to personal disciples. Yi Xian looked at Lu Yenran's plain clothes and immediately told her she could change them. As you command, Master. Lu Yenran said obediently. In the Qinyan sect, disciples were divided into different levels. From the lowest ranking to the highest ranking, there were handyman disciples, exterior disciples, interior disciples, and personal disciples. Disciples of different levels also had different clothing. Hearing this, Yi Xian could not help but smile and nod. He soon spoke again. Today, I will open up your meridians and pour wisdom into your body. Yi Xian's seemingly casual words stunned Lu Yenran. Lu Yenran's body could not help but begin to tremble in the next second. Is what Master is saying true? Is he really going to pour his spiritual power into my body? Although her strength was weak, she was certainly not unknowledgeable. After she finished her cultivation for the day, she would go to the scripture depository within the sect to read books. She had used up almost all of her allowed time there as a handyman disciple. It was because of this that Lu Yenran knew exactly what spiritual power being poured into a body meant. In layman's terms, a cultivator with a high cultivation base would give their cultivation base to some weaker cultivators. In other words, it meant that the spiritual power that they had painstakingly cultivated could be given to others for free. Generally speaking, the spiritual power after being enlightened would be completely lost, and the initial cultivator with a high cultivation base would only be able to replenish this part of their lost spiritual power through cultivation in the future. It was a purely altruistic concept, and almost no cultivator actually chose to do it. After all, for cultivators, time was extremely precious. The cultivation in their bodies had been obtained through arduous work. Unless one was a fool, otherwise, no one would give their cultivation to others for free. Even if they were blood relatives, it was very rare for spiritual power to be infused into someone else. Under normal circumstances, only cultivators who were in a desperate situation and knew that they were doomed would impart their spiritual power to their loved ones or to extremely important people. No matter what, this imparting was a great favor, almost equivalent to raising someone ever since they were a baby. It was precisely because of this that Lu Yenran felt extremely shocked. She was completely stunned and could not think straight. Spiritual power infusion. If Yi Xian really did this, her strength would be greatly improved. Even if her aptitude was average, her cultivation would still undergo a tremendous change after that. Master. For a moment, Lu Yenran's voice choked with sobs, and her eyes turned red as she hid them. Yi Xian treated her so well. How could she repay him? Moreover, it was already enough of a blessing to be his personal discipline. What had she done to deserve even more special treatment from him? No matter what you did before, now that you're my disciple, you naturally won't be mistreated. Yi Xian said calmly. In the eyes of outsiders, spiritual energy installation was a bad thing that did not give one any personal benefits. Basically, no cultivator would ever choose to do it. However, for Yi Xian, this was completely beneficial and without harm. After all, he had an apprentice feedback system. Every bit of spiritual power he taught would be returned at the lowest multiple. The more apprentices he took in, the higher the amount of feedback he would receive. In short, he would not be at a disadvantage. Of course, Yi Xian would not randomly take in apprentices because of this. Although he did not value talent, he still attached great importance to the character of his apprentices. Follow me. Yi Xian looked at Lu Yanran indifferently and then walked into the hall. Yes, master. Lu Yanran held back her tears that were about to fall and followed Yi Xian with a face full of gratitude. Since her parents passed away, no one had ever treated her so well. She did not expect to meet such a good master in her lifetime. Soon, Lu Yanran came to the hall, still behind Yi Xian. The hall was very wide. There were 5 or 6 futons inside it. This was where Yi Xian usually secluded himself. Then, under Yi Xian's signal, Lu Yanran came to a futon and slowly sat down. Yi Xian sat down behind her. At the same time, a few lines of words appeared in Yi Xian's field of vision. Of course, no one other than him else could see this virtual font. Comprehension value. 234, innate bone value. 25, Kendama body. Not yet activated, can be activated with star sword grass. This was the function of the disciple feedback system. He could see clearly his disciple's talent. This so-called talent referred to the cultivator's comprehension value and innate bone value. Comprehension value, in layman's terms, was the cultivator's understanding of heaven and earth. The higher the comprehension, the higher the cultivator's understanding. Thus, their cultivation speed would be extremely fast. Not only that, but it would also be of great help to the cultivator's later comprehension of power, such as sword intent. Cultivators with poor comprehension would have to spend more time comprehending the power of heaven and earth, and their success rate would still be extremely low. The innate bone value referred to a cultivator's physique. After all, everyone had a different physique. Some cultivators were naturally very friendly to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. With the help of the system, they could cultivate twice as much as others with half the energy. Other cultivators might have to spend 3 to 4 years to break through, but they would only need a few months to do so. Your bone and comprehension value are pretty average. Yi Xian could not help but exclaim upon seeing this. No wonder Lu Yanran worked so hard. Her current cultivation was only at the 4th stage of the refinement state. When Yi Xian saw Lu Yanran's special physique, he could not help but narrow his eyes. Presumably, activating the Kendama body would greatly improve Lu Yanran's bone value. It seemed that he would need to spend some time to find this sword star grass. After all, after Lu Yanran activated her special constitution, he could also receive some feedback points. Abandon concentration and immerse your spiritual energy in the present. Just as Lu Yanran's face filled with nervousness, Yi Xian's voice rang out. Lu Yanran hurriedly closed her eyes. Her entire essence, qi, and spirit instantly gathered together, slowly absorbing the spiritual energy flowing between heaven and earth into her. Buzz! In the next second, Yi Xian's palm suddenly pressed against Lu Yanran's back. Spiritual qi surged out of his body and slowly poured into her core. Is Master's power so terrifying? When Lu Yanran felt this vast power, she could barely calm herself down. Chapter 7. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. One disciple is not enough. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Quickly restrain your mind and carefully comprehend my power. Absorb it all. Just as Lu Yanran was getting lost in a daze, Yi Xian's voice sounded again. Her eyes grew a little ashamed before she quickly stabilized her mind. However, because the gap between their realms was too big, Yi Xian was forced to slow down the speed of his transmission of spiritual power. After all, Lu Yanran's meridians were too weak. If too much spiritual power was transferred to her at once, it was very likely that her meridians would be damaged. As he transmitted this spiritual power, Yi Xian also paid attention to Lu Yanran's condition. After all, spiritual power infusion was no small matter. He had to constantly control his speed of transmission. This was closely related to Lu Yenran's condition. If her meridians were saturated, then he would have to reduce his speed. Of course, even if Lu Yenran could completely withstand his power, he could not blindly output all the spiritual power in his body. After all, he could not confirm the exact multiple of the system's feedback. Although the probability of a high multiple was very low, if it really happened, it would be a disaster for Yi Xian. The reason was very simple. If Lu Yenran withstood all of Yi Xian's power and suddenly received hundreds or even thousands of times the feedback, Yi Xian's current meridians would definitely not be able to take it. Even if Yi Xian barely pulled through this terrifying force, his meridians would still suffer a lot, and it might very well affect his foundation in the future. This one disciple isn't enough. I have to take in more disciples. When the time comes, I'll use each of them. With enough time, I'll definitely break through very quickly. Yi Xian continued to transfer his spiritual power to Lu Yenran as he thought about this seriously. If he irrigated all his disciples with his spiritual power, even if he received a high rate of feedback, he would be able to easily withstand the power and not damage his foundation. After all, if he had very few disciples, even if the rate was high, it would be within his tolerance range. Moreover, he could also find some more disciples to help him out. With that, he would be able to have many breakthroughs in a very short period of time, and his future would be set. With Yi Xian's surging spiritual power, Lu Yenran soon broke through in her cultivation. After becoming a cultivator, the first realm one would face was the refinement realm. Across the vast and boundless Tianyuan continent, everyone had innate qi in their bodies, but its location was obscure. If one wanted to become a true cultivator, one had to locate the innate qi in their body, then slowly circulate it around their body according to the cultivation circulation technique. After performing the cultivation circulation technique, the innate qi in the cultivator's body would gradually grow stronger. This would then evolve into a more innate strength, which would then strengthen the cultivator's meridians and flesh. The refinement state was divided into 10 stages. Every time a cultivator broke through a small stage, the strength of the qi and force in their body would double, and their physicality would also be strengthened. When the cultivator's core and meridians were filled with the strength of their qi, it meant that the cultivator's cultivation had broken through to the 10th stage of the refinement state. If a cultivator at such a level was on Earth, they would have power akin to a transformer. They would be able to tear apart a small building with just their bare hands. When the energy filled a cultivator's core, their spiritual power would completely penetrate their meridians. From then on, the cultivator would be able to sense the spiritual power that existed between heaven and earth. Thus, using the cultivation method taught by the sect, the spiritual power between heaven and earth would be absorbed into one's core. This state was called qi transformation state. Compared to the previous qi transformation force, the spiritual power flowing between heaven and earth was undoubtedly of a higher level, and it had a stronger effect on the cultivator's physique. After absorbing enough spiritual power of heaven and earth, one could even expand the space in one's core. The qi transformation state also had 10 realms. Yi Xian's current realm was the true core realm. The power in his body was of a higher level than the spiritual power of heaven and earth, so there was no need to say anything more. He transferred his power to Lu Yenran. The speed of the realm breakthrough that he catalyzed within her could not be imagined. 4th stage of the refinement state. 5th stage. 6th stage. Lu Yenran felt like her cultivation was going through some crazy breakthroughs. The most important thing was that the power she obtained was not superficial at all and had no effect on her foundation. The reason for this was very simple. When Lu Yenran broke through a minor stage, Yi Xian would carefully compress the power in her body and use his spiritual power to stabilize her foundation. For a moment, Lu Yenran's heart was filled with gratitude. In the entire Qinyan sect, which cultivator's master would ever do such a thing? Forget the Qinyan sect, she had read stories of cultivators in ancient books and had never come across such a selfless teacher before. However, it was also possible that she did not have too much experience and had not seen all kinds of things, but no matter what, her heart was still filled with gratitude for Yi Xian. After I get revenge for my family, I will serve my master for the rest of my life. This young girl, who was in the prime of her life, silently made a vow in her heart. Yi Xian did not know what Lu Yanran was thinking, but he was very serious about transferring his own power to her. Soon, Lu Yanran was breaking through at a speed visible to the naked eye. The 7th stage of the refinement state. 8th stage. 9th stage. 10th stage. When the power of Qi ran through Lu Yanran, her meridians were instantly opened up. At the same time, she could feel the spiritual power flowing between heaven and earth. Yi Xian instantly increased the speed of transmission of spiritual power. He used his own power to guide the power in Lu Yanran's body, slowly circulating it and absorbing the spiritual power flowing between heaven and earth through her. The 1st stage of the Qi transformation state. The 2nd stage of the Qi transformation state. The 3rd stage of the Qi transformation state. One was very serious in transmitting his spiritual power, while the other was very serious in refining the former's spiritual power. This pair did not notice the passage of time at all. When Lu Yanran entered the 8th stage of the Qi transformation state, the speed of her breakthrough also slowly slowed down. Yi Xian also noticed the change. It was obvious that the spiritual power infusion was about to reach its limit. Of course, this was related to Lu Yanran's bones. If Lu Yanran's bones were stronger, she might be able to accept more power. Soon, after Lu Yanran's cultivation entered the 9th stage of the Qi transformation state, Yi Xian stopped the transmission of power. If he continued to transfer his power, Lu Yanran would naturally break through again, but this would damage her foundation and affect her meridians. Although he wanted more feedback points, he would not ruin his disciple's future because of this. Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The kind that comes once a month. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Lu Yanran slowly opened her eyes. After sensing the surging power in her body, her eyes grew extremely excited. She never thought that she would one day break through from the 4th stage of the strength training state to the 9th stage of the Qi transformation state. This was simply unimaginable. She felt like she could totally beat up hundreds of clones of her previous self without breaking a sweat. Most importantly, not only had her cultivation crossed over into the 9th stage of the Qi transformation state, but her foundation was also extremely stable without the slightest bit of weakness. The most important thing for her to do now was to completely familiarize herself with the power in her body. However, because her foundation was extremely stable, Lu Yanran only needed to spend a few days to completely grasp the power in her body. Ding! Because the host has been transferring cultivation power to his disciple for a month, he has received 15 times the feedback. Critical hit. Congratulations, the host has obtained 450 days worth of cultivation. The system's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Rumble. In an instant, the power contained in Yi Xian's core skyrocketed. He was now only half a step away from the middle stage of the true core state. It's so nice cheating. The speed at which my cultivation breaks through is amazing. Yi Xian noticed the changes in his body, and his eyes could not help but shine with a golden light. He could not help but smile. With his current strength, he only needed to spend a moment to completely grasp his new level of power. With 450 days worth of cultivation, after deducting the loss of a month from the transmission of power, he had profited with 420 extra days of cultivation. With just one spiritual power transmission, he had gained more than a year's worth of cultivation. I didn't expect that 400 days of cultivation wouldn't be able to help me reach the next state. The further I get, the harder it is for me to break through. Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not help but sigh. At his current state, 1 day of cultivation gained through the system was equivalent to 1 day of cultivation gained from closed-door training. Due to the difference in states, the amount of cultivation obtained was also different. After all, although it was the same amount of cultivation done in 1 day, the cultivation of the Qi transformation state and the true essence state were completely different. To give an example, if Lu Yanran wanted to get to the 9th stage of the Qi transformation state, it would have taken her at least 6 to 7 years to break through with her own efforts. However, with the transfer of Yi Xian's spiritual power, she only needed to spend a month to reach the true essence state. From now on, I will irrigate your spiritual power every month. Yi Xian stood up and said to Lu Yanran. Now that he had tasted the sweetness of spiritual power infusion, how could he miss this opportunity? Moreover, if he took in 2 disciples and irrigated his spiritual power once, he would be able to immediately enter the middle stage of the true essence state. What? Lu Yanran, who was still trying to control her new power, was stunned. Spiritual power infusion once a month. Was Master serious? Lu Yanran was petrified. Yi Xian's methods shocked her. Whether it was the 3rd grade soul returning pill or this spiritual power infusion, he had completely exceeded her expectations. Lu Yanran had indeed fantasized about 1 day becoming a disciple of a master cultivator. However, she had never dared to imagine that she would receive such treatment. Yi Xian's words almost scared her silly. Spiritual power infusion once a month. Even her own father would never be so good to her, right? Master, I. For a moment, Lu Yanran's eyes could not help but redden. 2 streams of clear tears flowed down her beautiful face. You don't have to be so touched. If you slack off with your cultivation because of this, you won't be able to enjoy such treatment in the future. Yi Xian looked at Lu Yanran, who was moved to tears, and spoke slowly. However, he was somewhat helpless himself. After all, he was no selfless saint. Infusing Lu Yanran with his own cultivation was just to obtain feedback points from the system. He would not do something that would not benefit him. Of course, he also knew what the infusion of spiritual energy in the Tianyuan continent represented. Normally, no father would do this for even their own child. After all, the cultivation lost with infusion was permanent. It could only be recovered through cultivation from scratch. On Tianyuan continent, the strong preyed on the weak, and the strong ruled. No cultivator would selflessly donate their cultivation. Yi Xian's methods had undoubtedly surpassed an ordinary master-disciple relationship. Even partners might never be so nice to each other. Just 1 infusion of spiritual power had already touched Lu Yanran so much, let alone the future monthly infusions. Bam! Lu Yanran suddenly knelt down in front of Yi Xian, pressing her pure white forehead hard against the ground. I understand Master's kindness, and I will definitely remember Master's kindness after my rebirth. I will definitely serve Master well for the rest of my life. Lu Yanran's body trembled slightly as she said this, her eyes filled with determination. Other than her parents, she had never had anyone treat her so well before. Lu Yanran's story was very tragic. She used to live in a small mountain village and had no worries in life. However, one day, bandits suddenly attacked her village. The bandits cruelly massacred the entire village. She was one of the lucky survivors. After going through all kinds of hardships, she finally joined the Qingyun sect and became a handyman disciple. However, because she did not have a good backer in the sect, and because she had a strong constitution, Lu Yanran was subjected to endless looks of disdain and bullying. Although she did not seem to care much on the surface, she felt extremely wronged in her heart. Every night when she was falling asleep, she would suffer alone. Lu Yanran had sworn back then that she would work hard to cultivate and become a disciple of a senior with a high cultivation. She would learn how to kill those bandits. However, she knew very well that her innate ability was very mediocre. It was almost impossible for her to become a disciple of a senior in the sect. Just when she thought that she would only be a handyman disciple for the rest of her life, she met Yi Xian. Yi Xian was like a beam of light, shining brightness into her dark life and bringing her out of her shell. Silly girl, don't kneel when you see master again in the future. Yi Xian reached out and gently lifted Lu Yanran up. A gentle force immediately helped her up, and even Yi Xian's voice grew gentle. I have something to tell you, master. Lu Yanran wiped the tears off her face and said to Yi Xian. Chapter 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Old Feud Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. What's the matter? Hearing this, Yi Xian could not help but raise his gaze and look at Lu Yanran in confusion. My real name is not Lu Yanran. My real name is you. Lu Yanran revealed the secret hidden in her mind. It was obvious in Lu Yanran's heart that Yi Xian was already a person worthy of her full trust. Otherwise, she would not have revealed a secret that she had kept hidden for so many years. Yi Xian's eyes slowly turned cold. He never expected his disciple to have such a tragic backstory. Lu Yanran had lived in an ordinary small mountain village. Most of the villagers were ordinary people who had not practiced before. There were only a few cultivators who practiced at the Qi transformation state, but their cores were only at the third or fourth stage. The villagers' names were simple and plain. At that time, Lu Yanran's name had been Yu. Although the villagers did not have much money, they were still self-sufficient. The families were all quite happy. However, this peace was ruined one day by a group of bandits who appeared out of nowhere. These bandits robbed the entire village and took away all its young and beautiful girls. Back then, Lu Yanran had only been 10 years old. Because she and her father had been cutting firewood on a mountain not far from the village, she was lucky enough to escape this calamity. When they returned to the village, the bandits had already massacred everyone. The surviving villagers had left, and the village was a sea of blood. They thought that the bandits would not return. They did not expect them to come back again after resting for a while. Not only did they rob the villagers of their money and food, but they even slaughtered everyone they could get their hands on. Paying with the price of her father's life, Lu Yanran escaped to the Netherworld Forest. The Netherworld Forest was filled with all sorts of powerful beasts, so the bandits did not chase her into it. Lu Yanran was lucky to survive. However, Lu Yanran's parents were not so lucky and were killed at the hands of the bandits. Lu Yanran witnessed all of this with her own eyes from the forest. One could imagine how much her heart had ached back then. Up until now, Lu Yanran still vaguely remembered her father's final words before death. You must live on. Don't avenge us. As long as you live a good life, Dad and Mom can die without regrets. However, how could she not avenge her parents? Back then, she did not even have the strength to tie a chicken up. She had not yet stepped into the path of cultivation. Her father naturally did not want her to take revenge and lose her life in vain. Perhaps it was God's blessing that although the Netherworld Forest was filled with powerful demon beasts, Lu Yanran had passed through without trouble. It was after Lu Yanran left the Netherworld Forest that she successfully entered the Qinyan sect by chance. In the beginning, with Lu Yanran's talent and innate ability, she was simply unable to become a disciple of the sect. At the time, the manager in charge of accepting disciples had looked at Lu Yanran's tattered clothes and the bloodstains on her face and could not help but feel sympathetic. It was also because of this that Lu Yanran successfully became a handyman disciple of the Qinyan sect. After Lu Yanran told her story, she could not help but get lost in the memories of the accident back then. She fell into an extremely sad mood. It had been 2 years since her parents died tragically at the hands of the bandits. Every night, when it was quiet, she would dream of her parents' tragic death. The image of the village would appear in her mind unprompted, like a nightmare. During these 2 years, Lu Yanran had no one to talk to about it. Only she could lick the wounds left in her memory. However, today, she had met the kindest person in the world to her. She loved him just as much as her parents. You. As tears welled up in Lu Yenran's eyes, a broad and warm hand came to rest on her shoulder. You were once you, and you will still be you in the future. You're my disciple. No matter what difficulties you encounter, there's no need to hide your name. Aren't they just a mere mountain bandits? I'll accompany you to meet them now. You can personally avenge the village and your parents. Lu Yenran's tearful face slowly lifted. Hearing Yi Xian's domineering words and looking at his handsome face, she felt warmth in her heart. It was also at this moment that the grievance in Yu's heart could no longer be suppressed. Her tears started to fall like raindrops. Before today, she could only bear the grievance by herself and force a smile in front of others. However, from this moment onward, she had someone to talk to, a master who was like family. Master, Yu threw herself into Yi Xian's arms, her tears falling like rain. Yi Xian gently patted Yu's head. His palm contained warm power, slowly calming Yu's emotions. This little girl was only 12 years old, but she bore the deep hatred of the entire village and her parents within herself. Life was indeed hard on her. It was also because of Yi Xian's spiritual power that Yu had completely trusted him and told him her secret. Of course, to Yi Xian, Yu was also someone very special. After all, she was his first disciple. How could he bear to see his disciple suffer such a grievance? Moreover, this was a blood feud involving her parents. Perhaps those bandits were particularly fierce when compared to ordinary people, but in Yi Xian's eyes, they were just small ants. In 3 days, we'll set off. Seeing that Yu's mood had slowly calmed down, Yi Xian spoke. Yes, master. Yu nodded obediently. Then, Yi Xian stretched out his hand and gently tapped on Yu's forehead. In an instant, core cultivation methods and martial techniques related to the Qingyun sect entered Yu's mind. Ding! Due to the mid-grade black-grade martial technique Windstorm Sword technique that the host has imparted to his disciple, a random 10-fold feedback critical hit has been obtained. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the high-grade black-grade martial technique Windstorm / Ding! Due to the mid-grade black-grade martial technique Rampart Sword technique that the host imparted to his disciple, a random 20-fold feedback critical hit has been obtained. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the high-grade black-grade martial technique 3-feet sword defense. Ding! Due to the high-grade black-grade martial technique sword spirit art that the host imparted to his disciple, a random 100-fold feedback critical hit has been obtained. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the low-grade earth-grade martial technique, sword defense lightning technique. The system's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. More critical hits translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The martial arts that Yi Xian taught you represented attack power, defense power, and the core cultivation methods of the sect. Most importantly, these represented the highest level of Yi Xian's martial arts. Across the entire Tianyuan continent, whether it was martial arts or cultivation methods, from low to high level, they were divided into the grades of yellow-grade, black-grade, earth-grade, heaven-grade, saint-grade, and emperor-grade. Each grade was then divided into top-grade, high-grade, mid-grade, and low-grade. The previous martial technique feedback was not uncommon, but it surprised Yi Xian that one of the pieces of feedback was so powerful that it had allowed him to directly obtain a low-grade earth-grade cultivation method. As everyone knew, under the condition of equality in talent and innate ability, the higher the rank of the cultivation method that one used, the faster one's cultivation speed would be. Yi Xian had imparted some martial arts to you. Since the type of martial arts he imparted already had their feedback returned, there was no feedback for the martial arts he imparted later on. Moreover, the martial arts that Yi Xian had imparted afterward were mostly yellow-grade martial arts. Although their quality was not high, it was extremely well suited for Qi transformation state cultivators to practice with. Only when Yu's realm broke through to the true essence state or the higher purple spirit state could she truly unleash the power of the black-grade martial arts. I'll give you some more pills. Just as Yu was thinking about martial arts and the new techniques she had learned, Yi Xian's voice rang out again. He spread out his palm, and 3 pills suddenly appeared in it. As he had already given her a third grade soul. Returning pill, Yi Xian chose pills with other attributes this time. One of the pills was called the True Essence pill. It was a rare pill that could help cultivators condense the true essence in their core. It was considered a high-value supplementary pill. The second pill was called the Poison pill. The pill contained a lethal poison that could corrode a cultivator's reinforcements. It was best used to deal with enemies at the true essence state. The other pill was called State-Breaking pill. It was the pill that peak Qi transformation state cultivators used to enter the true essence state. In the next second, the 3 pills in Yi Xian's hand turned into a stream of light and landed on Yu's palm. Ding! As the host has given his disciple a true essence pill, first grade, the host has received a 3-fold feedback critical hit. Congratulations, the host has received a body refining pill, first grade. Ding! As the host has gifted his disciple a poison pill, first grade, he has received a random 5-fold feedback critical hit. Congratulations, the host has received a black poison pill, first grade. Ding! As the host has gifted his disciple a state-breaking pill, first grade, he has received a random 10-fold feedback critical hit. Congratulations, the host has received an energy-breaking pill, second grade. It was obvious that the feedback critical hit from imparting pills was very ordinary. Well. You don't have a storage ring yet, right? I'll give you mine. Yi Xian looked at Yu as he reached into his pocket and spoke. Master, this isn't. Hearing this, Yu was about to refuse. After all, a storage ring was extremely precious. Even as an elder of the Qinyan sect, Yi Xian only had 1 ring. How could he give it to her? However, Yi Xian did not give Yu the chance to refuse. The storage ring in Yi Xian's hand instantly turned into a stream of light and appeared on Yu's hand. Of course, most of the things in the original storage ring had already been transferred to the system storage space. All that was left inside were pills and some things he did not need. This was also an experiment Yi Xian was doing. He planned to see if he could get a critical feedback attack by giving his disciple a storage ring. Ding! As the host has given his disciple a storage ring, 350 cubic feet, you will receive a random 5-fold critical hit feedback. Congratulations, the host has obtained a storage ring, 1765 cubic feet. The system's voice rang in Yi Xian's mind again. Yi Xian hurriedly opened his newly obtained storage space but saw that there were no pills there. He was thinking about whether putting some pills in the storage space as a gift would give him a corresponding critical hit, but he did not expect the system to not even give him the chance to try. Now that I've given you cultivation methods and some martial arts techniques, all you need now is a weapon. Ednel.co, how about this? I'll give you a Qinyan sword. Yi Xian waved his sleeve, and a Qinyan sword filled with sharp sword qi suddenly appeared in the air. This Qinyan sword has been by my side for 5 years. It's a powerful high-grade spiritual artifact. From today onwards, it's yours. Yi Xian stretched out his hand and gently tapped it. The Qinyan sword bloomed with sharp sword qi, then turned into a stream of light and landed in front of you. Master, I. Seeing this, Yu's eyelids could not help but flutter. She did not know how to reply. Facing her master, who doted on her so much and did not hide anything from her, she knew that no words of gratitude would be enough to express her appreciation. Yi Xian's attitude towards imparting knowledge was immovable. She could only choose to accept it. Although words could not express the gratitude in her heart, she would use her own actions to express her gratitude to her master. Ding! Due to the host gifting his disciple a Qingyun sword, high-grade spiritual artifact, a random 102-fold feedback critical hit is obtained. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Cold Light Ice Soul Sword, low-grade magic artifact. The system's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. A long sword filled with ice-cold power appeared in the system's storage space. It's actually a magic artifact. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyes could not help but light up. A magic weapon was much more powerful than spiritual qi, and it would also help him improve much more. On the Tianyuan continent, a cultivator's weapon could be of the grade spirit.grade, magic.grade, mystic.grade, or saint.grade. Each weapon's grade was divided into top.grade, high.grade, mid-grade, and low.grade. Although the Cold Light Ice Soul Sword he obtained was only a low.grade magic weapon, its power was far superior to a top.grade spirit weapon. Yi Xian had wanted to get a weapon with strong defense, but unfortunately, he did not have a defensive weapon on him, so he could only wait. Alright, you, go to the sect's administrative office now and collect the clothes for a personal disciple like yourself. After settling everything, you can move to Lingjiu Peak. If you run into any cultivation matters, you can come and consult me anytime. In 3 days, we'll set off. What you did not know was that Yi Xian wanted to use these 3 days to prepare a special gift for her.